So thank you for joining me here today at Why the Book Wins. My name is Laura, and today I am going to be ranking the 10 Best Picture nominees for the 2024 Academy Awards. And after I share my ranking of those 10 movies, I will then share my own personal 10 favorite movies of 2023. And by the way, I do have my own mini Oscar right here that I got when I was a kid, so I made sure to include that in the shot for today's video. And let's just get right to it, beginning with number 10, I have Barbie, which by the way, even though this is listed as my least favorite movie of the bunch, I still gave this 3.5 stars, so I still liked it and I would still recommend it, as goes for all these movies, right? Because this is the lowest rated one, and yet I still gave it 3.5 stars. So I feel like 2023 was a great year for movies. We got so many fantastic ones that I just absolutely loved. And so it was kind of tough figuring out where to rank these. But anyway, so Barbie, I still liked it. I would still recommend it if you have not seen it yet. But I'm pretty sure this movie was the most watched of any movie in 2023. So chances are you probably have already seen it. And I do think like I got kind of annoyed by the way it was being hyped up and constantly talked about, and it just became such a thing, which is cool, but it kind of was in my face too much all the time and I kind of got tired of it. But regardless, I do like the movie. The set design was incredible. Barbie Land looked amazing. I love the performances. And I do love the message too, you know, the feminist themes, anti-patriarchy, like all of that was fantastic. It was just a bit too heavy-handed for my taste. I think I would have resonated more with the story had there been more subtlety and nuance. But I get Greta Gerwig wasn't going for subtlety and nuance, so that's kind of the point. But ultimately, yeah, this list is very subjective, obviously. And Barbie, as much as I liked it, it just wasn't one that I personally like resonated with. And it didn't like have a profound impact on me. And if it had a profound impact on you, by the way, that's fantastic. But for me, it just didn't affect me in a deep way, I guess. It was fun, it was entertaining, and I liked the message. I'm Just Ken, that song performance was fantastic. I liked Margot Robbie. America Ferrera, I'm a huge America Ferrera fan. Also, I did think the story was very clever. You know, with Barbie, something's off with her and they think it's the daughter, but then they realize she's connected to the Ferrera character. And so for the most part, I did like the way things played out. Like I said, I think its messages were sometimes a bit too heavy-handed for my taste. But I'm glad America Ferrera was nominated and that she's being acknowledged as the fantastic actress that she is. So yeah, that is number 10. On to number 9 on the list. This is a controversial opinion because on Instagram, I asked people to share what their favorite of the top 10 picture nominees were, and the most frequent reply I got was The Holdovers. And I'm placing it here at number 9, which I do wonder what I would have thought of this movie had I seen it in theaters, but I like just barely watched this the other day just because I wanted to watch all 10 Best Picture nominees, and that's the only reason I watched this movie. So I'll admit it wasn't one that I like instantly was excited for by any means. I remember seeing a trailer early on and I was just kind of like, whatever. And then it started getting all this talk and all this buzz, and I was kind of confused, being like, wait, what? I saw a trailer for that and I didn't expect much of it, but now everybody's loving it. But regardless, I did enjoy it. And again, I would still recommend it if you have not yet seen it. It is very wholesome and heartwarming and sweet and touching and funny, and we do get great performances. And so even though I'm putting it at number 9, I still liked it. And I do like that, you know, this movie isn't trying to like push the limits, and it's not trying to be edgy, and it's not trying to do something you've never seen before. It's kind of going back to just like an old school, like literally, because it's based in the 70s at a school. So it's kind of going back to the old school kind of movies where it's just this like sweet, heartwarming story about how we need each other and about helping each other out and being there for each other, getting out of your comfort zone. And yeah, just the bond between this like old curmudgeon kind of a teacher and this young boy, young teenager. And then the cook at the school, of course, who will, you know, she will probably win Best Supporting Actress this year. That's what everybody is saying. And yeah, we do get fantastic performances. And yeah, and I did love, again, just like the simplicity of the story and just how touching it was. And so yeah, I would definitely recommend this. I definitely liked it a lot, but I'm putting it at number 9 simply because it just, I don't know, it didn't like resonate with me in a deep way, and I didn't like connect with the story. Like I enjoyed it and I'm glad I've watched it, and it achieved what it set out to do. I just don't think it's the best movie that came out last year. And then number 8 on the list is Maestro, and I really enjoyed this one. I think the performances were fantastic. Of course, Bradley Cooper, he is a fantastic actor. I love him. But honestly, the performance I keep thinking about is Carey Mulligan. She was incredible in this movie, so I would definitely recommend it just to see the performances because they were just so good. And also, I thought it was a really interesting look into Leonard Bernstein's personal life, and just how, like, there's a part where they ask him, he's being interviewed and they're asking him about the creator side of himself as well as like the performer side of himself. And basically he says how they are these two different sides of him. And he jokingly says, like, I guess the way you can be that way is you just become a schizophrenic and have multiple personalities. But I loved it because it shows how he did just have these different sides of himself, like as we all do, but with him it was more distinct. And then on top of that, he was also bisexual, which kind of plays into things, of course. Fantastic performances. Again, Carey Mulligan, there are multiple scenes that I still think about. Light spoilers, but later on when she's older and she's talking about going on a date with a guy, but then it turns out that guy was gay too, that monologue was fantastic. And then when she is sick and dying and people come to see her, but when they leave, she breaks down crying and she's like, I don't want any more visitors. She was just incredible. So fantastic. So, and also there's like a musical number in the black and white section. She's sitting on stage and watching like the performers, and just an amazing musical number. I kind of wished we would have gotten more of that, but yeah, this movie was really good. So I would definitely recommend it. And then with that Instagram story, when I asked people what their favorite movie was, the next most commonly answered one was Oppenheimer, but I am placing that at number 7. So again, I liked the movie. Visually, it was fantastic. It was like such an experience. We get fantastic performances as well. So ultimately my complaint comes down to just like the script itself. And I get they are trying to fit so much history into a 3-hour movie. And so I get that is like a daunting task, but I feel like it just could have been done better. You know, like the Florence Pugh character, I kind of don't get why they felt the need to include her. Like I get she was a real person, but I feel like that could have been cut and it could have given them more time to focus on other elements, other aspects that were more interesting or maybe kind of mattered more to the story. And then some of the dialogue too, I just kind of wasn't loving. But regardless, it was fantastic. The Trinity test scene, of course, is incredible. And Cillian Murphy is fantastic. So yeah, ultimately it just comes down to the script and the dialogue. Yeah, this was, like I said, it was such a visual experience and a very memorable experience. But at the end of the day, it just wasn't my favorite movie of the year. And take everything that I'm saying with a grain of salt, of course, because I'm just some random person on the internet and I am not claiming to have the definitive ranking of all of these movies, and my opinion is right. By no means do I think that. So go ahead and share your own thoughts on all of these movies down below in the comments. I'm not trying to convince you you should or shouldn't like any of these movies more or less than you do. I'm just kind of putting my opinions out there for the world just because I can, I guess. But number 6 on the list is The Zone of Interest. This movie was fantastic, and the more I think about it, the more impressed I am with it, and I'm almost feeling like it should be ranked higher. But we are now getting into, like, from here on out, these are all movies that I just thought were incredible. So The Zone of Interest, it was just so chilling and horrifying the way we see into the lives of this Nazi leader who was running Auschwitz and his family and his wife Hedwig. And in the video review for this movie, Nick from Fish Jelly, he quotes the line, like, the banality of evil, because yeah, we're just seeing their everyday lives, and it's not like something suspenseful is happening at every minute. Like, it's just very kind of banal in a way as we see them going about their lives. But like the impact of seeing them go about their lives though, like you see how desensitized they have become and how normalized they have made this situation, and how they become desensitized to like the human suffering happening at Auschwitz, but how they also, that desensitization also causes them to be desensitized to just their fellow humans too, right? Even like their own family members, you know, and their own colleagues. They just become so heartless and soulless and so desensitized, I guess is the best way I can say it, which in the book 12 Years a Slave, he says that when he lived in the South, people who owned slaves who lived in the South, they had a lesser view of their own fellow people, right? Whether, regardless of their skin color, they just had a lesser regard for human life, right? Because when you see the violence happening towards any kind of people, and when that becomes normalized, again, you become like just a heartless person who has a hard time caring about any kind of human life, you know, like how that seeps into who you are and it affects so much more, right? Like, so we see these characters, you know, going back to the zone of interest, how they are hearing this suffering happening every single day. And initially they might be like, oh, well, that's, you know, the people in the concentration camps and they have their reasons for justifying it and thinking it's fine. But how that like wears you down, and how, again, like there's a part, kind of spoilers, but there's a part where he's talking about being at this like work function where he's being honored, and she's asking like, oh, was so-and-so there? And he's like, oh, I wasn't really paying attention. I was busy thinking about like how I would kill them all if I were to gas this place, because that's like what he specializes in. And how he's just with his own colleagues, his fellow Nazis, and yet he is just thinking about the logistics on how he would kill all of these people in this room right now. So yeah, and then of course Hedwig, like how she wants to stay at Auschwitz and doesn't want to be kicked out of her home, and just the juxtaposition of their house as she's giving a tour of this home that she loves. Meanwhile, like, you know what is happening to these people in this concentration camp, these people who were torn from their own homes. And she says too, like how like, oh, it was so cold in the winter, the first thing we did was install heating. And of course you're thinking about the poor people in the concentration camps who don't have heating and they're out like freezing and dying in the cold. But anyway, yeah, I could go on even longer about this one, but which I'm kind of getting into spoilers yet again, but the part when at the very end he's like trying to throw up but he can't, and how like I read that as he is like so sick and twisted on the inside, even though we just seen him get a medical check and they gave him the A-OK, but how he has something so wrong with him that a doctor can't see, you know? So yeah, anyway, this one was fantastic. If you have not seen it, I highly recommend it. And I also love the way it was filmed too. I just want to say, like, we don't actually see any violence take place. We just like hear it in the background. And so it's just this ever-present thing and like the walls and the barbed wire and everything. And so just, yeah, this ever-present violence and horrific things that are happening and how it seeps into their lives too, like when they're in the river and then like, yeah, anyway. You should watch this movie. It was horrifying, but fantastic and so well done. Saying it's fantastic or incredible, like I feel weird using those words because it is such a horrifying, chilling story about something that really happened, obviously. And so, yeah, anyway, you should definitely watch it. And as I'm talking about it, I feel like I should be ranking this higher, but this is where I listed it, so I guess that's where I'll keep it. So anyway, number 5, we have American Fiction. And this one was great because it combines comedy and drama, and we have so many great thought-provoking conversations between so many different characters. And it also has like very touching, heartfelt moments. And then it's also very meta and clever and witty, and obviously the social commentary it's making. I love the book it was based on, and I thought they just did a great job adapting the book and keeping those same themes, even if the story isn't exactly the same. And again, incredible performances, fantastic characters that are just so memorable. And again, there are so many scenes from this movie and so many conversations that are had that I just keep mentally returning to and thinking about. And then next up is Past Lives, which this seems kind of high for Past Lives, like maybe, I don't know, whatever. This is where I listed it when I wrote it out, so I'll keep it here. But this one, I think I put it so high just because it was one that I just really resonated with and that stuck with me and that it really affected me in a deep way. And it is like a love triangle. Like that's like the most basic way to explain this, but it is just so beautiful and so well done. And it is about a woman who is married, but she reconnects with a past boyfriend. And I loved seeing all three of them interact because at first she just meets up with him, but eventually the husband joins and they all three are hanging out. And I just loved the conversations that are had. And I love that we like each of these characters, right? Like the typical love triangle would be the two men fighting over the woman and who will like win her ultimately, but it's not about that. I'm kind of going to get into spoilers here because there's a part where the past boyfriend is talking to her and he's saying how like, to me, you're the one who leaves because that's, you know, the pattern in their lives. That's how it's been. She ends up leaving. And he's like, but for him, meaning the husband, to him, you're the one who stays. And so I just loved that too, because like you might want to be seen as the one who stays, or like in life, I like to be seen as very reliable and I'm someone you can count on. But sometimes you need to prioritize, right? And so some people might not see me as reliable because maybe they're lower on my list and it's more important for me to be seen as reliable to this other person. And so this other person does see me as reliable, but it's at the expense of someone else not getting to see that side of me, you know? And so that's kind of the same, where she can't be the one who stays for both of them, you know? And so just the way you are someone different depending on who the person is, and how that's just the way life is, right? Like you have to have like a priority list in a way, kind of like I was saying. But then this one also deals with how, you know, the character, she goes from Korea to America, and kind of how like depending on where you live, you connect with a different side of yourself, and how like you can change depending on your surrounding. And I have never moved countries, but I feel like someone who has could definitely relate to this, I would assume. I have moved states a lot, and states within the United States can be very different, right? So I can relate to that in moving states and how that has impacted me and who I end up being. And then, yeah, the ending scene was just so emotional when she says goodbye to the past boyfriend, and then she starts crying, and the husband is there comforting her, and how he is so kind to her, right? Like it's not the typical like jealous husband or something. Like, yeah, he's kind of jealous. And there's this part where they're talking about it in the bedroom after she's met up with him that first day. And so it's a love triangle, quote unquote, kind of, but the characters are so self-aware of the situation they're in, and they are just so much more complex than you usually get in like a love triangle story. And so calling it a love triangle, I feel like is lessening what this movie really is. But yeah, this one again is one that I think back about a lot, and it had a deep impact on me, and it like affected me emotionally, and it made me cry. Fantastic performances. Yeah, anyway, I love this one, and I would highly recommend it. And number 3 on the list is Poor Things. So this one has become kind of a controversial movie, which I'll get into, but even in my own book versus movie video, I was conflicted on how I felt about it, because the ending is different than the book ending, and I was really wanting them to incorporate this book aspect. I will keep it spoiler free for now. But yeah, there was like an aspect of the book that I was really wanting to see in the movie, and we did not get it. And I was just very disappointed by that. But as time has gone on, I still really loved this movie, and I'm placing it at number 3, which again seems pretty high, but that's where I listed it. So that's where I'll keep it. And yeah, I also kind of wanted Bella to experience more resistance on her like pathway to freedom and embracing who she is and finding out who she is. You know, kind of like Barbie, she does experience some resistance, and she has these like hardships along her own journey. And so I kind of, even though I like Poor Things better than Barbie, I kind of wish we would have seen some of that hardship in here as well, along with the fact that I wish they incorporated the book ending. But regardless, again, the performance is impeccable by absolutely everybody. And again, this is another movie that is just so visually stunning. It was so funny, so entertaining. And again, it's also just a very human story and about the human experience, you know, which is obviously a theme with some of my favorite movies, is just like the humanness of it with these like fully realized characters. And I just loved seeing Bella again as she like progresses and mentally matures and grows and becomes more aware of the world around her. And it was just such a memorable, unique experience to see this movie. And yeah, I already listed some critiques I have, but another critique is also her time in the brothel, which is different from the book. And I kind of wish they would have kept that more same to the book as well. But the main reason why this has become more controversial, and now I will be getting into spoilers, and it is because that Bella has the brain of a baby, but the body of a woman. And this part is funny in the movie when Godwin is talking about how he created Bella. And he's like, so I had this woman I had revived, but like, you know, she had tried to kill herself. So did I want to bring her back to life because she probably wouldn't like it? But then I had this baby whose brain I had. And he's like, and the answer was obvious. When it's like, but was it? Was it obvious? But anyway, that's what he ends up doing, right? And so we do hear how her brain develops faster. And so it's not like, you know, if a year goes by, it doesn't mean she's at a year level. Like it progresses faster. And people are just really disturbed by this aspect of the movie, and the fact that her like sexual desires are such a big part. When she has the brain of a child, they just find that really bothersome. And I do get that, but I think also maybe people are taking it too literally when they have that complaint, because honestly, it wasn't something that I really thought about, and it wasn't something that bothered me. And again, like I can see where people are coming from. But yeah, it's like such a fantastical story. And even though I said it is a very human story as she realizes the truth of human nature, you know? But yeah, so maybe people are just kind of taking it too serious, taking it too literal. I don't know. But also like the men in the movie, you know, Mark Ruffalo, for example, he is definitely seen as like a predatory guy who is taking advantage of Bella, who clearly, you know, isn't as mentally capable as other adult women. But I thought that was just such a clever play on the Born Sexy Yesterday fantasy, right? That men have, where they want a woman who is dependent on him and who isn't very smart and who needs him to guide her through life. But at the same time, she's like a fully developed woman, right? They don't, like, the fantasy is that men don't want like an independent woman who will be her own person, who has her own thoughts and doesn't need the man, right? In the fantasy, the woman needs the man for multiple reasons. And so at first, Bella does kind of need Duncan, and he guides her and teaches her about like the different kinds of pleasure, right? Because there's physical, but there is also like all of the food and all of the traveling they do and just like the excess of the world to enjoy and all of that stuff. But yeah, but as time goes on, she outgrows him. And she's kind of like, I'm kind of over you. Like, I don't need you to guide me through life. And that's what you want me to be. And so the fact that you're trying to keep me at this same level of a naive person who needs you to guide them through life, you know, she outgrows that and she outgrows him. And so she outgrows the men who have this idea of who they want her to be, I guess. I feel like I'm not being the most eloquent there, but I think you kind of get my point, right? How it does such a great job at exposing that trope as we see Bella grow and progress in her own way and become more independent. So, but yeah, ultimately, I loved this movie a lot. I'm putting it at number 3 from the Best Picture nominees. So yeah, anyway, let me know your thoughts down in the comments. But number 2 on the list is Killers of the Flower Moon. This movie was just so fantastic. I did feel conflicted initially as I left the theater, trying to decide how I felt about the perspective choice that they used. And I think I would have bumped this up to 5 stars had we gotten a bit more from Molly's perspective, but nonetheless, I still loved it and would highly recommend it. I was so engrossed in the story the entire time. The performances are just so incredible by absolutely everybody and just everything about this movie. And again, there are so many scenes that I will just never forget. And I thought this was just a fantastic adaptation too of this real life story. And I thought Scorsese did such a great job telling this story, right? Scorsese, along with the screenwriter, I forget his name now, but they all just did a fantastic job. And I thought they were just so respectful in their telling of this story and respectful of the Osage people. And the ending I thought was just perfect and I loved it. It's heavy and hard to watch, but it is just so well done. Just so many incredible scenes, like I said. And then the pacing was just perfect as well. And yeah, so yeah, my number 2 movie of the Best Picture nominees. It was incredible. And now to my favorite movie of the Best Picture nominees. One person did list this in my Instagram polls. One person also listed Past Lives as well. Also someone listed American Fiction, but only one person named my number 1 pick, and that is Anatomy of a Fall. This movie is like a murder mystery. Like initially I was interested by like, oh, like how did this guy die? Like what's the mystery? Like what's the answer behind this mystery? But then as the story goes on, like that fades to the backdrop, and it's really about how this courtroom is trying to boil down this complex long-term relationship between husband and wife, and they're trying to make it so simple and black and white, and they're trying to ignore all of the nuances and complexities, and instead they're trying to break it down to like, you know, you did X and that equals Y, which means you're guilty, you know? And so just how relationships and people are just so complicated, and it is impossible to simplify things and to try to distill it down into something so basic, because again, like as individuals, we are so complex. But then when you add on top of that, this long-term relationship that has so much drama that has happened, as every relationship does, and just, yeah, all of the contradictions that go on, and just, I thought it was just such a fascinating look into this marriage and the complications within a marriage. And then we see them interact and this argument they have, and it all just felt so real. The dialogue is fantastic. The performances were amazing. And then another reason I loved this movie is because they have a son, and he is there in the courtroom hearing this trial, and he is experiencing for the first time, realizing, you know, as kids, you see your parents as like one-dimensional, right? Like they're just your parents. He's getting a crash course at how his parents are these complex humans who are very flawed and who like did things that hurt each other. And he's also trying to figure out like for himself, did his mom kill his dad or not? And how like he just needs to know for himself. And so he just has all of this going on, and his performance was fantastic. And just there were just so many fantastic scenes, such great dialogue. I'm gonna get into spoilers here, but the scene where he tells the mom that, you know, he's gonna testify on that Monday. He tells the intermediary person that he doesn't want his mom there for the weekend. And when the mom is being driven away, like Sandra Hüller, who is also in the zone of interest, and her performance was fantastic. And then when that person who is like watching over the boy, I forget his name now, the actor's name is Milo, I think, but she tells him how like sometimes when you don't know either way, like you need to decide for yourself which one is true and then just kind of commit to it, essentially. And so I definitely think the story he tells about his dad was clearly made up, right? But it was because he decided he was going to believe that his mom was innocent. And so he wanted to help her be proven innocent. And so he told this lie. And then that scene in the end when she comes home and she says, like, they both acknowledge that they were nervous about having her come home. And then when he's hugging her, and just the scene with the dog, right? Like that dog was fantastic. And wow, this movie, again, I was just so enthralled the whole time. Such a great analysis of people and relationships. And again, like this boy, as he is learning about his parents, and we don't even realize how the guy died, but it doesn't even matter, right? Because that wasn't even the point of the story, even if it started out that way. So yeah, this one is fantastic, and it's still one I think about all the time, and I absolutely loved it. But anyway, this is going to be a quick list because that took a while going through the Best Picture nominees, but to share my own favorite movies of the year. So top 10, number 10 is tied. I couldn't choose between these two. It's Are You There, God, It's Me, Margaret, and Blackberry. Two totally different movies. Are You There, God, It's Me, Margaret is very sweet and innocent and wholesome and pure, and it's about childhood and girlhood, but it's also about the mother and the grandmother, and as they are going through changes in life. And so you see women at three different stages, right? A 12-year-old, a woman in her 30s, a woman in her 60s. And it's just about how we are constantly having these coming of age moments, you know? And I just thought it was beautiful. Absolutely loved it. Fantastic performances. But then I also loved Blackberry. It's a story about a cell phone, but it was so suspenseful at times. Like some of those boardroom meetings and when they're presenting the phone and just different drama that was happening, you're just on the edge of your seat waiting to see what will happen. And fantastic performances, and also such an important part of our history, right? With the iPhone that ends up happening, which ruins Blackberry. And so, yes, so fantastic, so fascinating, incredible performances, so funny as well. So yeah, I loved both of these. And then next up is Beau is Afraid, which is one of the most unique and bizarre movies I have ever seen. I did start to feel the length. It's 3 hours. And in that third hour, I definitely started to feel it. Yeah, it's just so weird and so interesting. And that first hour, though, is like so intense, and I have never experienced a panic attack, but I feel like that movie does such a great job in making you feel like getting a taste into what that must be like, because it is just so beyond stressful, and you're just like on edge and just so tense, not because it's suspenseful, but because it's so stressful. And then when he goes to that lady's house and the daughter, and it is just so unique and so weird, so much to think about, a lot of interesting scenes that I have continually thought about. So yeah, that one was really, really good. It's not one I would recommend to just anybody because it is so weird and odd and dark at times, but to the right person. If you liked The Curse, you should watch Beau is Afraid because they are kind of similar in some ways. But up next, number 8, I have The Zone of Interest, which I already talked about. Number 7 is American Fiction. Number 6 is Past Lives. Number 5 is The Iron Claw. And this one is fantastic. How did it not get more Oscar nominations? I mean, they weren't campaigning for it for some reason, but it is fantastic. Such amazing performances. I feel like maybe this one is a bit high though. Maybe I should have had this below Past Lives and American Fiction, and maybe even Zone of Interest. So maybe this should have been lower on the list, but it's definitely in my top 10. Such an incredible saga with this family. I wish it was longer because I could have watched this movie for 3 hours and just everything that is going on with this family. Zac Efron is absolutely fantastic. His physical transformation and then his performance were just incredible. And yeah, I just loved this movie so much. And then I have Poor Things at number 4, Killers of the Flower Flower Moon at number 3, and at number, which 3, 2, and 1, like they're all so good, but 2, I have May December. So May December was just so fantastic, such like a heartbreaking, tragic story, but Charles Melton, he was incredible. Biggest Oscar snub was him not getting Best Supporting Actor, because the way he plays this man who has experienced arrested development, right? Because he got with this woman when he was like 13, and so he's in his 30s, but he acts like his demeanor is still that of an insecure teenage boy. And just as he's realizing the fact that this was not the love story she tells him it was, and that she manipulated him and groomed him, and he is just now kind of realizing this. And the part where Natalie Portman, because she is an actress studying this story, and she says something like, she calls it a story, and he's like, what? Like, this is my life. And so it's a commentary too on how we view these kind of, this isn't a true crime story, but it's kind of the same thing as Killers of the Flower Moon, where these real life events, and yet we see it just as a story and not thinking about how these are real people. We're not treating them with empathy and kindness. We're just seeing it as an entertaining story. But yeah, fantastic movie, and I absolutely loved it. So many fantastic performances. Charles Melton, of course, Julianne Moore, Natalie Portman, and then like every side character too was just absolutely perfect. So many great monologues from all of the different characters. Yeah, highly, highly, highly recommend this. And then number 1 is still Anatomy of a Fall, which I absolutely loved, as you already know. So yeah, that wraps up this video. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what your favorite movies of the year were. Let me know if you agree or disagree with my personal top 10. And yeah, I will see you next time. Bye.